morning, my name is Nori Han, and today I want to talk about the challenges with stopping climate change. Now, in this modern age, we are surrounded by information on how we can stop climate change. From social media to news broadcasts to news articles. It's everywhere. But the question is it really as simple as it seems? The answer? No. It's complicated. Now, let me give you a little context here first. For the past 30 years, the global temperature has increased by 0.75 degrees Celsius. This is half of the 1.5 degrees Celsius standard set by the International Panel on Climate Change. If we go above this standard, the problems that we are facing right now with climate change will be exacerbated to a level where we as humanity will need to find a new home. Hence, decreasing our CO2 emissions will be absolutely crucial, as they are the main causes of climate change. Even though we have known this as a fact in the early 90s, but numbers have shown that we are seemingly not doing anything to stop it. As of 2020, the total CO2 emissions rate has increased by 50% of the year 2010. Four factors can be related to this occurrence: population growth, economic growth, energy intensity, and emissions per energy. Let's start with population growth. According to the UN, the global population is expected to reach around 11 billion at the year 2100. Population is important because as more people come onto Earth or are on Earth, CO2 emissions will rise because every human needs food, shelter, and a job. All of these basic needs will contribute to CO2 emissions. This is also why controlling the global population is extremely important, and more funds are going into this cause each year. But it still needs a few years to truly show effect. Second, economic growth. The global economy over the past few decades has always increased, and as a result, poverty rates has decreased, and more people have lived more comfortable lives. But there's a side effect here. The better our lifestyle gets, the higher our CO2 emissions. An example would be a programmer in the US would have higher CO2 emissions rate than 50 farmers in Uganda. Furthermore, both developed and developing countries will never stop the idea of economic growth, because if a country stops economic growth, it will mean being poor, and no country wants to be poor. Now that I have covered the few causes of why CO2 emissions increase, now let's look at a few ways that we can use to solve them. The first, energy intensity. Now, energy intensity is defined as the amount of energy required to produce a certain output. Put it into simpler words, it means efficiency. Now, in this modern age, technology has become really advanced, and the things we use in everyday life has become more and more efficient. This is a good thing because as things get more efficient, we use less energy and reduce our CO2 emissions. But that's not the fact in real life. Why is that? Two effects. First is direct rebound effect, the second is indirect rebound effect that makes this happen. Let's start with direct rebound effect. Let's say we compare an energy efficient fridge to a non-energy efficient fridge. The first thing you will realize is that the energy efficient fridge is much larger. And through this example, we know that when things get more and more efficient, we tend to use more of them. So in turn, we don't really reduce our energy usage and CO2 emissions. Second, indirect rebound effect. Now, let's say you bought an fuel efficient car. You would save money from fuel as you don't need to pay for it as often. But you would use that money that is saved up to buy flight tickets for a vacation. So in the end, you end up emitting more CO2 than you would with a non-fuel efficient car. These two effects explain why efficiency is simply not enough to stop climate change. Which brings me to my fourth point, emissions per energy. Now, Emissions per energy is defined as the amount of CO2 emitted per unit energy. As of today, our main source of energy for the entire world is still burning fossil fuels. And this is an extremely important factor because we are burning more and more fossil fuels each day to meet higher and higher energy demands. Hence, we need to transition from fossil fuels to renewables as fast as possible, and faster than the current situation is. Now, you might ask that we have already started this transition, one of the proofs being the Paris Agreement. But this isn't enough because what we are doing right now is just the tip of the iceberg of what we can do. And we need to do more if we wish this transition to be faster. Examples would be moving our funds from fossil fuels to renewables and stop construction of new fossil fuel power plants. And there are many more. And I believe that when action meets efficiency, climate change will be solved. As a conclusion, to wrap things up, climate change is very hard to stop, as billions of lives need to be taken into account, and we also have to understand that this is not going to happen overnight. It will go through a very long period of time, and we need to put a lot of collective effort to stop it. But it is still very much possible, and I believe if humanity unites, we will solve climate change once and for all and save our beautiful Earth. That's all for me. Thank you.